Hello, Virgo. Welcome to your channel, Virgo. Thanks for being here. I hope you doing well. Okay, there's something suspended in the air right now. Like a breath that hasn't been released yet, like a word that's been forming for a long time, gathering weight, gathering courage, and may finally be approaching the moment where it finds its way out into the open. And something in you may already sense it, not as a certainty, more like a pressure, a quality of charged stillness around a particular person, the kind that exists just before something shifts, the kind that makes ordinary interactions feel slightly heavier than they should, slightly more loaded, slightly more aware of themselves. You may have been feeling that around someone recently. And if there's a face that came to mind before you even finished reading that, then what follows may be worth sitting with for a moment. There are feelings that don't stay contained forever. Not because the person carrying them lacks discipline or control, but because some things accumulate past a certain threshold, past the point where silence feels like a sustainable choice, past the point where the effort of not saying something begins to cost more than the fear of saying it. It's possible someone has been living in that accumulation, carrying something about you, something specific, something that didn't arrive all at once but built quietly over time in a place just beneath the surface of every ordinary interaction between you, in the pause before they respond to something you said, in the way their attention tends to find you in a room without appearing to try, in the small, almost imperceptible ways that care shows itself before it's been given permission to be called what it actually is. You may have noticed some of it. Or you may have noticed it and talked yourself out of it, offered another explanation, a more neutral reading, because the alternative felt too large to hold without knowing whether it was real. Let's talk about what it might feel like to carry something like this. To be in the presence of someone you feel deeply for and to manage that feeling in real time. To calibrate every interaction so that it reveals just enough warmth to feel authentic, but not so much that it exposes something you haven't yet decided is safe to expose. That kind of internal management is exhausting in ways that rarely show on the surface. And there may be a particular quality of tenderness in how this person moves around you, a carefulness, and attention to your comfort, your mood, the small details of your experience that go slightly beyond what casual connection tends to produce. The kind of noticing that only happens when someone has been paying a particular kind of attention for longer than they may have admitted, even to themselves. It's possible they've been in this longer than, sitting with something that didn't have a name at first, that arrived quietly and then refused to leave. That made itself at home in them before they decided whether or not to let it stay, and by the time they noticed what it was already too settled to simply ask to leave. There's a particular kind of love that moves carefully. Not the loud kind, not the kind that announces itself early and asks questions later. The kind that watches first, that wants to understand before it speaks. That takes time, sometimes what feels like too much time from the outside, because the stakes feel too high for carelessness. This may be that kind. The kind that has been observing you, not with calculation, but with a quality of attention that's closer to reverence, taking note of the things that make you specifically you, the way you think through something out loud, the way you respond when something catches you off guard, The version of you that exists when you're not performing anything, just present, just real, just yourself in an unguarded moment, that version of you may be exactly what this person fell for. Not an idea of you, not a projection, but something they've actually witnessed, accumulated over time, held carefully, returned to when they needed to, remember why this feeling, however inconvenient, however uncertain of its reception, still feels worth the risk of eventually saying out loud. And there may be a risk from where they're standing, because saying something like this, admitting to a feeling of this size to a specific person in the specific language of I love you or whatever form their admission may take, requires a particular kind of courage that doesn't always feel available on demand. It requires the willingness to make yourself visible in a way that can't be taken back. To hand someone something irreversible and wait in the strange suspended silence that follows to see what they choose to do with it, that vulnerability is real. And it's possible this person has been building toward it for longer than either of you may realize. Rehearsing something, gathering something, waiting for a moment that feels right, or finally accepting that no moment will ever feel entirely right, and that the waiting has simply gone on long enough. Something may have shifted in them recently. A decision made quietly, without fanfare. A threshold crossed in the privacy of their own interior, where the weight of not saying something finally exceeded the fear of saying it, where the cost of continued silence became more tangible than the risk of exposure. And something may be approaching the surface now. Let's stay with you for a moment, because whatever may or may not be coming, whatever this person may or may not be carrying toward you, the more interesting question may be what's already present in you. What happens in you when you think about this person? Not the surface answer, not the composed, reasonable, socially acceptable version of your feelings about them, the underneath one, the one that exists before you've had a chance to edit it into something more manageable. There may be more there than you've been giving yourself permission to acknowledge. A warmth that arrives slightly faster than you'd expect when their name comes up. A particular quality of attention you find yourself giving to things they've said, returning to them later, turning them over, noticing what they might mean beneath their surface. A way that certain moments with them tend to stay with you longer than similar moments with others. These things may be telling you something. Not a conclusion, nothing as clean or certain as that, but a direction, a leaning. A part of you that may already know something your more cautious self hasn't fully agreed to acknowledge yet. Here is what love, when it's real, when it's been allowed to develop slowly and honestly sometimes, looks like from the outside before it's named. It looks like someone who remembers things, small things, things you mentioned once without any expectation that they'd be retained. And months later, they surface in a gift, in a reference, in the quiet evidence that someone has been holding something about you that you'd almost forgotten you'd offered. It looks like someone who shows up not only in the easy moments, in the inconvenient ones. In the moments when showing up requires something of them, a rearrangement, a sacrifice of comfort, a choice to be present when absence would have been simpler and no one would have blamed them for it. It looks like someone who adjusts, who notices what you need and moves toward it without being asked, who reads the texture of your moods with a sensitivity that speaks to the particular care they've invested in learning you, who makes you feel in ways that are hard to articulate but immediately felt like the specific person. You are not a generic version of a person they want you to be. Does any of that feel familiar? If it does, if something in you just quietly answered yes to any part of that, then what may be approaching you carries more weight than a simple admission. It may be the surface expression of something that has been present and growing for a long time, something that has already shaped the dynamic between you in ways that will make more sense in retrospect once it's finally been said. There may be a conversation approaching that changes something, not necessarily in a dramatic way, not necessarily with the weight and ceremony that moments like this sometimes carry in imagination. Sometimes the most significant admissions arrive quietly in an ordinary setting, in a voice that's trying to sound more casual than it feels, in words that are simpler than the feeling behind them deserves. And sometimes that simplicity is exactly what makes it land. Because the feeling behind the words doesn't need elaborate language to make itself felt. It arrives in the eyes before the mouth catches up. It lives in the particular quality of stillness that descends when something important is about to be said, that shared awareness, however brief, that both people feel and neither fully acknowledges until the words are already in the air between them. Something like that may be close, and whether it arrives tomorrow or later or in a form you didn't predict, there may be value in arriving at that moment with your own interior already a little more settled, already a little more aware of what you're carrying, already a little less surprised by what you feel when it's finally named out loud. So here is what may be worth sitting with as this comes to a close. Someone may be gathering the courage right now to make themselves visible to you in a way they haven't before, to offer something they've been holding quietly, carefully, tenderly, with more hope and more fear than they've probably shown in the direction of your hands. And you may already know, somewhere beneath the surface of your ordinary days, that something about this feels significant. Not because feelings always lead somewhere simple, not because an admission guarantees anything, or resolves anything, or makes the complexity of two people finding their way toward each other any less real, but because being loved genuinely, specifically, by someone who has taken the time to actually see you is not a small thing, even when it arrives unexpectedly, even when the timing is complicated, even when you're not entirely sure what you want to do with it yet. It's not a small thing. And you, whatever you're feeling, whatever you've been quietly caring about this person in your own unguarded moments, deserve to receive it with the full presence it's being offered with. Let yourself feel this. Whatever it brings up, the warmth, the uncertainty, the quiet flutter of something you haven't named yet. You don't have to have answers ready. Just be open. Sometimes that's the only thing a moment like this asks of you.